Hello! Now that ChatGPT has reached its fourth iteration and taken over the world, I wanted to take a look at what's possible if you fuse it with VS Code. In this video, we'll install an extension that allows us to tap into ChatGPT-4, use it to try and understand some code, and maybe then write some new features into this little text editor that I'm working on. So let's go. I'm in VS Code here, and I'm going to just look at extensions. Type in ChatGPT to begin with. And we'll see that there are tons of these extensions, of course, already. The hype is high. There are some ones with tens or hundreds of thousands of installs, but I want to skip down a little bit lower down to the one that mentions ChatGPT-4. If we look at what that allows, it's free, no session key or OpenAI key required, and it does support GPT-4 and says that generations are relevant to your code base with JavaScript and Python and TypeScript natively supported. So this is easy code AI. Now it says it's all secure, security is top notch, but always good to be a bit wary about security issues here. But I'll install this. And let's see what it can do. So you can ask the Codebase, what does this application do? You can do things like ask where is user authentication handled? What changes are needed to do X? Okay. And so you can use it to understand the big picture, perfect, and then you can go down and understand the specifics. So right click at a piece of code and ask GPT for open-ended questions or kind of these prefigured questions such as what does this do? So then it will explain in detail what the code is doing. How is this method used? It gives a nice description of the method. How is this entire file used? And then get code suggestions. So if you've got Copilot from GitHub already, similar to that. And then for bug hunting, analyze stack trace errors to figure out causes. All right. Is ChatGPT-4 free to use? Okay, free to use during alpha. So this might get paid later on. Okay, so it's installed that. Let's see what is needed. Make sure you can already use the find all references feature in VS Code. So that should be doable. Find all references, yes. And then index Codebase. Upon installation, you will see the option to index the Codebase. It's an important step that helps AI provide answers that are relevant to your specific situation. Required to use the Ask Codebase feature. Make sure to index a folder that contains most of the logic. Right. Okay, so we've got that. We've got it installed, ChatGPT-4 here on the left side. And here we see a whole panel for that. So let's add context. Yes. And let's index the codebase. So we have our folder, and it's going to index that. I've logged in already, but that was a simple process to just sign up and log in. Okay, so yes, what we've got here is a simple text editing app to look at code-wise. So it's got writing, basic formatting, color modes, full screen, trying to keep it really minimal. So that's what this code here is doing. And let's see what ChatGPT can do. I should also mention that here in the settings of the ChatGPT option, we can choose between 3.5 Turbo and 4. I've switched it to 4. So, how is this file used? Okay. Can I use it here? How do I understand what the whole thing is doing? How is this file used? Okay. How is this full used? What's the whole broader context? Okay, well, how is the editor JS used? Great. Yep. Well, it's not an HTML document. If I click the right thing, let's try this. Yes. Code above is a JavaScript implementation of a rich text editor called PenFlow, provides functionality such as initializing the editor, correct, loading and saving the editor state, yes, updating the text formatting options, bold, italic, quote, and URL, as we saw, yes, counting the number of words, window resizing, great. So that's a nice summary. Okay, so if we're in the editor JS, can we understand it better? There's a lot going on, a few hundred lines of code. Let's pick a method. Here we have options. What does this do? How does this method used? How is this file used? What does this do? Defines an init function, sets a variable writing to false, yes. Calls the bind elements function, which is not defined and given, but is likely responsible for connecting the HTML elements. Aha, pretty clever. So it, even though it's defined a little bit lower down, it makes a good guess at what's happening. Calls the create event bindings. Okay, so how do I get it to understand everything? Yeah, ask a high-level question. How does the UI work? Sure. How does the UI work? Beautiful. Initializes with the init. Uses bind elements. Absolutely. Event listeners. Yep, are triggered when the user interacts with the UI elements. Save state, load state functions. Yes. Used to update word count. Great. Anything else? What's the overall structure? Sure. Default editor and UI, obvious enough. Yes. Okay, I mean, it's a simple project, but it's telling us what we can know. So default, well, this is good information. It's used when there is no saved content in the local storage when the user loads the page for the first time. Brilliant. And correctly, it says that editor contains the core functionality of the text editor. The UI handles user interface components. Okay, so this is beautiful, helps me understand my old code nicely. Let's zoom in a little bit. So is there anything that's particularly complex or perplexing about this code here? Get bounding client rectangle. URL click. Oh, that kind of seems clear enough. Composition start. Okay. What is this method? Oh yeah, nope. I want to say, what is this? Composition start event is triggered. Yes. So what is composition start? You can dive in a bit deeper into something specific. Okay, so composition start is a document object model event that is triggered when a user begins composing text using an input method editor. So it's really inbuilt into the DOM. Great and good and fine. What else can we do? A few more questions. So we could write unit tests. Well, let's try that out. Yep. Contain, well, not that I'm a big unit test writer, but does this just not remove the boring bits of coding really nicely? Yes, target is URL input, URL class, contains UI inputs, and should not call find nodes. Okay, so, all right. Comprehensive by the looks of it. Okay, so I think we have a grasp of how nice this is in terms of understanding the big picture of a code base and then being able to zoom into individual methods and ask follow-up questions. Really lovely, and it does seem to understand the context pretty nicely when you allow it to index the folder, at least at this level of complexity. So the next step would be to actually do something useful and add some new feature to the code. I'm thinking that in our text editor we have a couple of these options: bold, italicized, quote. It would be nice to have strike through as an option if you're editing stuff and wanting to show that it's no longer relevant. So strike through option toggle here. So it's adding to existing functionality, but basically an entirely new thing. So can I just ask a question here? How do I add strike through as a editor feature alongside bold and italic? This is too complex a question. How do I add strike through as an editor feature? Great. So we'll add a strike through button to the text options in the bind elements function. That makes sense. We have our bold button, italic button. Now let's add it here. So whoop, why are you not letting me select that exactly? So we had a strike button, query selector for strike, and what happens when you click it. Okay, so we're adding that button to that little menu and binding it. We need to have that function in the editor.js. It's lovely that tells us where this is going. So if we have those clicks elsewhere, create event bindings, save state, on italic click. I was just looking for these places where these go. So if we've got on bold click and on italic click, then we should have on strike click too, I think. What is up with my copy pasting? Well, we can write it. Beautiful. And then in editor, update box states to handle the active state of the strike through button. So it knows there. So again, we have bold and italic, block quote, URL. So we will want to have just basically the same. That's all good. And then we say strike, give it a class name. It's strike active. And then the quote button, it's not quote button, it's the strike button. Yes. We are finished with the editor file, yes, and then we need to actually add that button in our HTML to those options. Yes, that makes sense. So where we have our div here that shows these UI inputs, we should have one, it's called right We wanted it here. Did we not? And okay, it's slightly different. It's got its title, whereas these don't, and it's got a box button italic, whereas this is strike icon. Maybe just to make it match, we'll link it here. Okay. And then we need CSS for the strike through button. Yeah, okay, so it doesn't actually tell us in the CSS what the strike through means. Okay, so how do I define the CSS? So that's this strike through. So if I don't know the CSS by heart, I can use the text decoration property, correct, with the value line through. That's exactly right. So now it's telling me what that would be. Text option strike. Let's open the CSS. Find anything for text options. Yep. UI box, text options fade. What does it do for quote? Block quote, yeah. Quote is there. Italic, options button. Okay, so we find a place here. So text options. It shouldn't be here, I think. Option, text options, strike. Now it's saying strike through. It's saying strike through because strike through. Line through, that'll do it. If strike throughs, the class name is strike through. Any class that has that should have then the text decoration property with line through as the value. So if I've got that, so this is the property that needs to be applied. And that's what should be happening, strike through. So what's happening? Italic bold. Yeah, strike through though. All right. Did not tell me that I do need to add it to the components of the editor at the top. Here, strike button, of course, needs to be initialized. It's telling me that can't set properties of null. It's trying to set the strike button on click because it's not been strike through. Yes, be consistent. Okay, so now if I run that, I have a space here, but it does the strike through. Thank you, GPT. What's missing is the icon exactly. So let's try and get that going. If we look at how the other icons here are done, they're just SVGs. I have added a strike through SVG, so we should just point to it properly. There's an icon CSS file. Maybe we can just point that appropriately and see what happens. Strike through. Let's just call that strike through. Strike itself is a bit too short for me. Okay, so what was the issue? It was referring to strike through as strike. But once we've done that, when we get this new icon there as well. But great. So now we're able to strike through text. We added a totally new feature to our text editor, basically with a very correct set of suggestions from ChatGPT-4. Having understood the context of the codebase, picking through multiple files, broadly correct, missing out on just a bit in terms of needing to add that variable for the button, and the CSS stuff was left a bit vague, and I then tweaked it to be strike through. But other than that, it's working. It's working. Beautiful. Okay, I don't mind using this a whole lot more. Let's see if OpenAI can keep up. But I'm really enjoying the capacity to just sort of dive deeper into an understanding of things, so I can maybe ask something much more specific and keep delving into a deeper understanding of the concepts and terminology right here without ever leaving VS Code. And no doubt this ecosystem will continue to develop at breakneck pace with new extensions, new options, plugins, things happening fast for the coming months. So it's going to be pretty exciting, and I would suggest and suppose that before long it's just all going to be so woven in to the software we use that it's going to be like an invisible layer on top of everything, with all the thrill and danger that can provide. So yeah, have a go. Open VS Code, take a look at the extensions. I didn't need an OpenAI account for this. I didn't need to pay anything, so at least at the moment. So have fun, give it a go, see what you think, and have a great day.